Hello everyone, we are ready for science and we are continuing in chapter 11 talking about the respiratory system. And last week we talked about the upper respiratory system and more about what breathing is and how it happens. In our last lesson we talked about the path through the nose and the larynx and the trachea and the vocal cords. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about the process, but more about the lower, what we call the lower respiratory system. So I want you to tear out page 179 that looks like this. And it says lower respiratory system at the top. I want you to tear that out and have that with you. We are going to work on just this side today. And I am going to read with you today. I would like you to have your book open too. This is page 272 and it looks like this. Okay, page 272, your trachea and bronchi, and we're going to read some here. And as I read, I want you to be looking at this page and what you can fill in. So if you look at the top, you notice that we've got a diagram here and we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need to look and see, well, where is that diagram? Is that diagram somewhere in this section? So if I look, where do you see the diagram? Do you find it? Page 274. So you can go ahead and pause right now and fill in the 1, 2, 3, and 4 here based on your diagram over here. Okay? Now, if you're ready, I want you to look at 5 through 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. 5 through 8 is done a little bit differently. They have it as a paragraph, really, that's explaining how things move. And so that might be a little bit harder to listen for. So let's read it first before we get into the section so that we know what we're listening for. Gases are exchanged when we breathe. Oxygen passes through the walls of the blank or little air sacs in the lungs. So I know that that blank is going to mean little air sacs in the lungs. The oxygen continues on into the tiny blood vessels called the blank. Okay, so we're looking for tiny blood vessels. Then the oxygen is carried to all parts of the body. At the same time, blank passes from the capillaries into the alveoli and is blank from the body. Okay, so you're going to have to listen for how those things move. Let's look at page 272. Your trachea and bronchi. Your respiratory system is divided into two parts. The nose, throat, and larynx make up the upper respiratory system. Below the larynx, from the trachea into the lungs, is the lower respiratory system, so almost at your neck. Okay, upper, lower. The trachea stretches from the larynx into the upper chest. It is about 10 to 11 centimeters or 4 inches long, about that long, in most adults. The trachea branches off into two tubes called the bronchi. One tube goes to the left lung. The other tube enters the right lung. Both your trachea and your bronchi have C-shaped rings of cartilage on their outsides. The rings keep them from collapsing and allow them to move as your neck and chest move. If a piece of food gets past your epiglottis, the muscles in your trachea walls react. The muscles can squeeze the rings together to try to keep the food from going into your lungs. Just like in your nasal passages, the lining inside your trachea and bronchi has mucus and cilia. The mucus and cilia trap particles of dust and dirt. The particles are pushed back up to your throat and you usually swallow them down your esophagus. If you have ever coughed to clear your throat, you have experienced those particles moving out of your trachea. Okay, your lungs. Your lungs are two sac-like organs that replace the carbon dioxide in your blood with oxygen. A flexible cage of bones protects your lungs. This cage is formed by your ribs, breastbone, and backbone. The top of your lungs reaches above your shoulder bones and is behind your collarbone. Okay, that may be higher than you thought. Look at the diagram. It goes all the way up here. You think of them as down here. That's amazing that they're higher than we think. The base of your lungs rests on the diaphragm. Healthy lungs are a pinkish gray color. Each lung is about the size of a football. Your left lung is slightly smaller than your right lung. That is because your left lung has a space next to it for your heart. Your heart and main blood vessels are located between your lungs. Okay? Lungs do not have any muscles of their own. Instead, your diaphragm and chest muscles control how your lungs move. When you breathe in, your lungs stretch and fill with air. When you breathe out, air is pushed out of your lungs and they return to their smaller size. The amount of air that can be taken into the lungs with one breath is called lung capacity. So capacity is how much something holds. Lung capacity. A normal breath for an average man is about half a liter of air. Lungs can hold more air if necessary, though. When a man breathes in as much air as possible, his lungs can hold about 6 liters of air. A woman's lungs can hold about 4.2 liters of air. Okay, so that's interesting, isn't it? So you can force more air into your lungs, just like we talked about involuntary and voluntary. So if I wanted to hold my breath to go underwater or play a musical instrument or sing, I wonder if singers or musicians have stronger lungs than other people. Bronchial tubes. Inside your lungs, your bronchi branch off into many smaller bronchial tubes. These tubes get smaller and smaller as they spread to all parts of your lungs. Many of these tubes are less than 1 millimeter wide. Some are thinner than human hairs. All of the bronchial tubes, though, have muscles and rings of cartilage to keep them open wide. The smallest tubes are called bronchioles. Bronchioles. Alveoli. This section is called alveoli. 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 That's a difficult name, difficult word to say. The bronchioles end in tiny air sacs called alveoli. Okay, tiny air sacs. Where have we heard that before? Look back over here. Oxygen passes through the walls of the alveoli, or little air sacs. The alveoli look like bunches of grapes. Each lung has about 300 million alveoli. They are surrounded by a network of tiny blood vessels called capillaries. The walls of the alveoli and the capillaries are very thin. In some places, they are only 1 cell thick. It is the alveoli that the exchange of gases take place. The air you inhale contains oxygen. The oxygen passes through the walls, here we go, of the alveoli into the blood in the capillaries. So the oxygen continues onto any tiny blood vessels called the capillaries. This would be number 6 in that little, it would be the second blank in that little paragraph. Then, okay, so the blood then carries it to all parts of your body. And that's what your next sentence says on your page. At the same time, I'm reading on your activity manual, okay? So what's the next words? At the same time, carbon dioxide passes from the blood in the capillaries into the alveoli. There, the carbon dioxide can be exhaled from your body. This exchange of gases is called breathing or respiration. Okay, so at the same time, carbon dioxide passes from the capillaries into the alveoli and is exhaled, that's your last blank in this paragraph, exhaled from the body. Okay, now your next section talks about coughs and sneezes and hiccups. So explain why coughs and sneezes occur. So that's what we're about to read now. How does your respiratory system react? Hiccups are caused by involuntary movement of what muscle? So that's what we're going to be listening for. When does snoring happen? And what are some causes of snoring? So we're going to talk about all four of these processes right now. Coughs and sneezes. Coughs and sneezes often occur when something irritates the lining of the airways. The force of the cough or sneeze moves the offending particles out of the respiratory system. When you cough, your diaphragm relaxes while your other muscles contract. This action violently pushes air out of your mouth. In much the same way, a sneeze is triggered by an irritation in the nose. The air is forced out through both the nose and the mouth. So, the sneeze is when something irritates your nose. A cough is when something is irritating the lining of your airways. Okay. Hiccups are caused by involuntary movements of the diaphragm. That's the muscle you're listening for. The diaphragm that disrupt normal breathing. When you have the hiccups, your diaphragm muscle contracts quickly and causes you to take quick, short breaths of air. The epiglottis closes suddenly while the diaphragm is contracting. This causes the hiccup noise. So it's not allowing that air to get into the lungs. It's stopping. That's why you have that because it's closing and not allowing it to go into the lungs. Many times there is no obvious cause for hiccups. Some people may get hiccups when they are full or when they eat spicy food. Strong emotions such as fear or anger can cause them. Hiccups can be noisy or quiet, but they cannot be controlled. That's why they're called involuntary. Snoring. A person snores whenever air cannot flow freely through the back of the mouth and the nose. The snoring sound is caused when parts of the mouth and throat vibrate and hit together. There are many reasons why a person snores. The person may have an allergy or cold. If the wall of cartilage that separates a person's nostrils is crooked, he may snore. A person may also snore if he is overweight, sleeps on his back, or has swollen tonsils, because all of that is affecting how that air is moving and how it's making more noise at it as it is passing through. Okay? So in the comments below, first of all, you should have been able to answer all of your questions now. Okay? In your comments below, I want you to tell me something that has made you cough or sneeze. So, and don't just say when you're sick. We're talking about like when something irritates it. So, when this happened, it made me cough. When something happened, or in general, like when people do this, it makes them sneeze. When you do this to someone, it makes them cough. Okay, so give me a sentence talking about what is something that might cause someone to cough or sneeze. Okay?